Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for StrataCom's official launch of our Kanban solution for Cherwell. Before we dig into the topic, I wanted to add a couple of notes. We will be recording today's session, so if you'd like to have a watch again, we'll be sending the recorded links out to everyone, and you'll be able to share those links with your team as well. If you have questions as we're going through, please use the questions pane to ask those questions, and I will field those questions to our presenter as we're going through. If you don't see the questions panel, find the little orange box with the white arrow. You click on that, that'll expand all of your optional panes. With that, I'd like to introduce our principal consultant, Eric Kruger, who's heading up the development of StrataCom's Kanban solution for Cherwell. He'll give a quick overview of who StrataCom is in case anyone is unfamiliar. And then we'll go through what is Kanban and show you the demo. All right, Eric, it's all yours.
All right, thanks, Laura. Yeah, so this is the official launch date of our Kanban for Cherwell. So this has been in beta for quite a few months, maybe 5 or 6 months, and it's built on the same platform, kind of the underlying platform as our mobile solution. So kind of works the same way. It's hosted on Azure. It connects to your Cherwell environment, and it is just kind of an extension of Cherwell, a different UI for Cherwell. So just a little bit about StrataCom. Founded in 1997. We've always just been focused on ITSM, or as it was called back in 1997, help desk. We've been a Cherwell partner for nine years, actually. We've got 16 certified Cherwell consultants. We do host the Cherwell Advanced Practitioner Call, and this is where we just kind of go over advanced topics like maybe performance tuning or upgrade versus re-implemented, or just different things like that, kind of for advanced. So if you are interested in that, just shoot Laura an email and she can get you signed up. And the format is kind of like this. We do a presentation and then take questions after, and we're always looking for ideas for presentations for that also. We also have some complimentary strategic projects mobile client, which is out there in the public with, it's been for a while, so a great mobile interface for Cherwell. Kanban Boards for Cherwell, which I'll demo today, and then coming soon, hopefully maybe end of March, early April, into beta, a lower environment sync utility. So if you are interested in being a beta partner for that product, just ping Laura or send her an email. So that will be a product that will allow you to sync your lower environments with your production. So if you've got a dev, test, stage, any of those lower environments, it'll be a product that will keep those in sync. So all your tickets, users, and really anything that could change in your production environment if you want to sync. And it'll be either real time or batch. So you could keep, say, stage up to in sync, real time, but dev, you could batch sync, maybe sync it once a week or just do it manually, sync down to dev. So it kind of, we'll get rid of those SQL restores, and we'll kind of keep those other things that you have in dev and test, like your test user accounts and maybe your test connections. It'll leave those alone and just pull what you want out of production. And it also can clean data. So if you have PHI data or something prod you don't want dev or test, you'll have the capability of cleansing those fields before they get moved into your lower environment. So if you're interested in that, ping Laura. So we're excited about that product and looking for beta partners. Then we've got an Active Directory users, teams, and workgroup integration pack, which is basically just allows you to sync Cherwell fully with Active Directory. So you can use Active Directory to manage team membership or workgroup membership or Cherwell users. So if you add or remove people from a Cherwell group, it will automatically add or remove them from the Cherwell team. And we've got some apps you can download from the Cherwell site, the customer approvals map, and Red requirements, enhancements, and defects. And Red, you'll actually see, I'll show my first board against Red, which is kind of the traditional development platform, kind of more of a traditional use case for Kanban boards. And then I will also show some kind of non-traditional, or what customers are also using Red for, kind of outside the development purview. So I'm just going to go over just some terminology items. So Kanban or Kanban, depends on where you're from. Just a way to visually depict work. So you'll see these boards. There's a visual representation of work, and it allows you to move them around and change kind of the status of the owner of these cards by moving them around the board. And the board is in our world is a list of records from Cherwell, and they're a list of records from a Cherwell query. One of the enhancements we are adding in the near future is the ability to do queries right in Cherwell or in the Kanban board, so you don't have to have a Cherwell stored query. But right now they all are based on Cherwell queries. And like every time we move a card, it'll be updated in Cherwell immediately. So anytime you see me move one of these cards, it's an instant update into Cherwell. And a card is just the board is full of cards. Each card is just a Cherwell record. So every card that you see is a Cherwell record. And then we have drop actions, and these are just actions that could be one steps or maybe REST API actions that's performed when the card is dropped on a column. So that could be something you'll see, like if we drop one on resolve for an incident, it'll pop a screen to put in the closure code and comments. And that could be behind the scenes drop actions. You'll see some behind the scenes drop actions when I show you approvals. Swim lanes are just vertical columns that live underneath the horizontally displayed columns. So we'll show you some swim lanes. So you can do swim lanes on these boards. And essentially that lets you organize your data a little bit more and also allows you to do like a double update on drop without adding the drop action. And then WebSockets and SignalR, so I'll kind of show you how that works. But basically our boards are updated live. So every time somebody moves a card on another board, if a card on your board is affected, that card will move automatically. So you've always got an up-to-date board with the newest updates from cards. And so the technology behind that is generally called WebSockets, and it's kind of a subscription technology, and we're using Microsoft's implementation of it called SignalR. So we have a SignalR backplane that all these tickets subscribe to, so that when a ticket is updated, they get the notification immediately and they know where to go on the board. So it's pretty amazing, cool technology. And just a couple things, I'll put this in here in case somebody wants to download and read more about why and what our goals were. But when we built mobile first and then Kanban, we had goals that we wanted to meet, like the products must be completely configurable. So we wanted to be able to roll out these products to the customer base based on kind of a platform where we could build a site, either a mobile site or a Kanban board in minutes, right? So we can take something and build up something completely custom in just a few minutes for a customer. It's got to be really easy to use, real-time updates. So we want these boards to be updated real time. So that's where we use SignalR. And we have to solve any issues with Cherwell, so we don't need to add anything to the customer Cherwell instance. So we like to be able to plug right into Cherwell without adding anything. So, there's some things like, we didn't want to have to put any database views fronted by Cherwell Object. So how do we solve for the fact that the REST API doesn't allow you to list members of a group? We didn't want to have to add any maps to customers. And then we have to put in workaround for any Cherwell API bugs. And then our last thing is it must be fast. Like it's got to be really fast. So round trip updates, we're looking at about 200 milliseconds or less to go from our site down to Cherwell and back. And some of that depends on how far away you are from the Cherwell server and the database under the server. But generally, we're looking at like 200 milliseconds. Like in our mobile, we have like a seamless offline mode where we preemptively cache basically everything. So if you lose, or if you're in a low bandwidth environment or you lose internet, you still have access to those records and can use them. And we've got a system set up with like 1 million customers in the customer database. And our goal there was to be able to search by name, by keystrokes. Every time you type in a person's name, as you're typing, every keystroke should bring back a set of results. So, so we were able to tune and make things really fast. And just some of the use cases we'll go over today. So boards for developers. This is a traditional board I'll show you, a development board. Boards for help desk. So this is great for triaging incoming tickets, assigning to other teams, or picking up tickets for first call resolution. And then boards for operational teams. And so you can see the number of tickets assigned to each team member and be able to pull from like an unassigned bucket and assign it to the least burden member. Boards for change or project work. So we should be able to see the, all the data just in a nice visual way and be able to change the status of those. So I've got some change boards. I don't actually have PPM loaded on this system, but we do have a system stood up just for PPM, so you can manipulate PPM projects and intake and tasks with boards. And then boards for approvers. So I'll show you that today too, kind of what an approval board looks like with some templated approval and denial reasons. And I can show this at the end, but if you want any more information, just contact Laura. And let me show you our first board. All right, so I'm going to show you our production red board. So this is based on red. So these tickets are held in underline red board, and it's basically our development process. So if we just look at that, this will give me a good way to explain all the different things on the board. So we've got the boards that are available are in this drop down, and these boards can be assigned by Cherwell security group, team membership, or individual. So that who you're logged in here determines what boards that you can see. So when the board is created, whoever creates the board can say, hey, I want this available for just this Cherwell security group, or just a member of this team, or these teams, or just these individuals. And then if we want to search on the board, right now we're going to enhance this probably and do a little more filtering search available by field, but right now we just search on everything. So if I search for Kanban, I can look at all my Kanban cards. So it's a nice way to narrow down the results of an individual board and just search for something specific. And I use that all the time if I'm looking for something that if I want to put a new feature in, I'd look and see, hey, is that already on the board? And next we've got the top level, the column headers, and these are basically, this is a field in Cherwell, so in red this is status, and then the values from the red statuses are put in here, and you kind of decide what values you want put in. And we've got another neat feature we call virtual columns or phantom columns, that are columns that aren't in this case in red. So these two columns are both, if I looked at these in red, the status would actually be review backlog, and I've just named this one backlog. But this one actually is a virtual column I've called just next in line. So it's more of a, I've kind of gone through backlog and pulled things in here, like we're adding a to-do list to Kanban. So that's next in line. So I've just kind of pulled those into here. And if I looked at this in Cherwell, I would still say review backlog. But because I didn't want to go into red and add all these different statuses and mess with that status table, I just created virtual columns for a lot of these. So a lot of these, like tissues, this is test issues. So if we have any issues with something in test, it goes into here. So we've got those virtual columns. And this just kind of follows our development. New product ideas are here, just so I have it handy. I usually have it minimized. But if the developer's done with something, once he's done with it, it goes into here. Once it's moved to test, they can roll it into test. If there's issues with it, we'll put it in tissues. Once it's been tested, it goes to implement, and then once it's in production, it'll go to production test. So that just kind of follows our internal development workflow. So, and then we've also got like this quick assign, where I can quickly assign it to somebody else, like anybody on this board. And then these cards, the information you see on the card is flexible by board. So you can change per board what you want to see on the card. And then we can actually work with these. If we want to do something else besides drag and drop, we can go in here, we can see the information. Then I've got some actions in here, like I've got close, take ownership. Most common for me is to go and just edit a red ticket and just go change the information then. So I can change the owned by, the status, the category, because we kind of categorize these, or they categorize. I can change the title and description. If I want to add like a note, I can add a journal entry to it, which will add a note. I can put it there, and then it'll show up so the next person that looks at this can see the notes. So we can leave notes for each other in these cards. So that is our development board. So now let me show you some other maybe non-traditional uses for Kanban, or a little outside the norm. This is just a board with incidents and the status that they're in. And I've actually added a virtual column to this one called in progress hold. So it's in progress, but they're on hold for some reason. So we've got cards that can be dragged in there. And this is where if I drop one unresolved, it prompts me for a cause code and a close description. And I've also got closed on this board, so we can actually close this this incident. You know, I think Cherwell will go behind the scenes and actually update this. But if I take the resolved and put it into closed, now this board, it's interesting because this board is actually just open tickets, so nothing from resolved or closed will show in here if you refresh. But these cards will stay on here until you actually refresh this board. So if I just refreshed it, these cards would disappear. So we've also got some rules put in. So if I wanted to go from closed to resolved, I can't, because it says there's a business rule that doesn't allow you to drop on the resolve column. And that's actually a rule that's put on this board. If I didn't have the rule on the board, you would get an error message back from Cherwell, and that would show up in red, and that would say that it can only be dragged to reopen, because that's a Cherwell rule. So we actually put that on the column so that we don't even have to go to Cherwell and check. We just check on the column. So, and we're enhancing that. So pretty soon you'll see when you pick up a card, only the columns that are available for drops will light up. So in this instance, if I pick this card up in a future release, all of the columns will gray out because I don't have reopened on this board, so there's no way to reopen this. And if I just refresh this, that closed will drop off the list. So let's take a look at some others. So I've got an approval one. This is really a cool one. So this is approvals that are in waiting status. So this is basically, hey, these tickets are waiting to be approved. And we've got a bunch of virtual columns in here. So approvals essentially have kind of 3 statuses: waiting, approve, and denied. So I've got like an approve. So if I want to approve, I can just go here and it just approves it. If I want to deny and enter some comments, I can drag it here. It'll ask for comments, and I'll just put in a comment. In this instance, I've got some denial reasons that I already have. I'm going to deny because of budget, for tech, or schedule. And if I just drag onto those, you'll see these will get denied. And I've got the denial reason here, so you can see those get auto-populated when I drop those on there. So we can deny so it's a really nice way of kind of templating these denials or approvals. And you can do that with really any. So if you're someone who has to work with a lot of records and it's kind of like you need to deny them, maybe you've got a bunch of different close comments that you want to automate. You could have a board with, you know, just a bunch of columns where and each one of these has a drop action signed to it then that automates what happens when you drop it on there. So that's a really cool one. And these can also be dragged back. I don't have any rules to drag it back to waiting. So if you want to unapprove it, you can drag it back to waiting. This board would be like maybe a team board. So these are members of a team. So maybe I'm the team manager, or maybe I'm just on this team and I want to see what I'm working on. So it's a nice way to everybody can see what's unassigned. And we can see Claire doesn't have any tickets, so we could drag it to Claire. And you can see, and everybody that has this board will see these updates. So in fact, if I I'm just going to drag another tab off the screen, and I'm just going to start kind of moving cards around. And you can see as I move these cards, like I'm going to populate Claire's. Oh, these are going to Claire. I don't think is on this team. If I go from Henry to Emma, you can see that card just moves back and forth. So I'm actually moving this on a different board. but you'll see it on my board because of our WebSockets implementation. So if you are at a board like this that's shared, you can actually see these cards move as people move them around. So it's a great way for everybody to be in sync as to what's going on with these cards, with these records, and you can actually see what's happening with them. So pretty slick there. This is kind of I just built this board to show Swimlanes. So this is just a bunch of groups, and you can look at these groups tickets then and see, hey, what status are these tickets in? So I've got status of new, assigned, and in progress here, so you can see kind of what the status is really easily, and how many tickets are in progress for each group. You can see that really simply. If you want to move things around, you can. Like if I wanted to move this from this group to this group, I can. And you can see that the group change, and you can see that that's about how fast the updates are when you see this change. So that's going all the way down to Cherwell, updating and then coming back and updating the card. So you can see that's pretty fast. But swim lanes are, just another way to organize these boards. Here's just another example of swim lanes. This is just incidents by status for maybe a team, and that team's maybe just got a couple people in it. So I've got Emma and Claire in these swim lanes, and if I want to assign something to Claire or assign it to Emma, I can do that, and you can kind of see what people are working on and what status they're in, just at a really easy glance. So those swim lanes are nice for that. If we look at changes, we can take a look at change requests. So this is just a board of all open change requests. So you can see what status these changes are in. If you want to look at some of the change details, you can just go in and take a look at it. We can do a few other actions from here. One of the things we're coming out with soon is to move the actions down here. So you'll just be able to do actions from here. So if you want to add a journal entry, you just tap on the add or click on the add a journal entry, and you can add the journal entry there. So you can move these around kind of as the rules allow you to. And that's one big difference working on a board versus working in Cherwell, is that Cherwell kind of ties you in to a specific workflow, and they do that with their kind of workflow one step, where you only have access to move it forward or backward kind of according to how those status tables are organized. So because of the way that boards work, generally people will work from left to right, but you have the ability of working really in any order. So for example, with tasks, generally, and I do have the rules enforced on this board, but you could have a board where the rule wasn't enforced, where you could go from new to closed and kind of skip the acknowledge and then process. So as you can see, I do have a rule on this board that won't allow me to drop on close. I'm forcing it to follow the kind of the process of the task, and then I get the description. But you wouldn't have to, especially if Cherwell, you do have to follow the Cherwell rules. So if Cherwell does have some, rules in there that you have to follow, like you can't go from new to close, and they actually enforce that. The only way to make that work with the board is to unenforce that rule. But generally, Cherwell a lot of times is not enforcing those rules. They're kind of enforcing it via the the incident status table and the one step. So a lot of times for status, you can move things around on our boards from one status to another, and Cherwell doesn't care. And you'll see that too. Like a lot of customers I've seen will just have a one step called change status, and it just allows them to set the status for a ticket so that they can change it outside of kind of that one step. So and that's about all the boards I have. So this will be a nice quick demo, but Laura, did we get any questions? Or if anybody has any questions, you can pop them in now.
I don't see any questions so far. So if you do have any questions, things you can think of, please enter them now before we end our webinar. Okay, someone has a question. Dark mode, question mark.
Dark mode. No, we don't have any. We don't have a lot of skins for this yet, so we'll probably come out with some skins. But right now, we don't really have any skinning available on this. So what you see is what you get. So no dark mode for Kanban boards yet.
Okay, we do have a few questions that are rolling in, so just a reminder as well, please enter your questions now. When we see our last question, we'll give another 30 seconds before we drop. All right, so we've got a few queued up. The next question is, what version of Cherwell is required?
Any version 8 and above should work. I think the lowest version we've tested this stuff with is 9.3.2. I just haven't run into any customers with that have wanted either mobile or Kanban with earlier versions than that. But in theory, version 8.0 would work because that was kind of the first version to support REST API.
Okay. We've got some questions about, is it hosted by StrataCom? If you could talk about the hosting situation, or if someone can host it internally.
Yeah, so this is hosted on our Azure server. So this is hosted by us on Azure in in the cloud. And I've talked to some other customers about potentially that, yes, they could put this internally. We could package this up for IIS. Right now we're using a lot of Azure, like Azure Functions and Azure applications, but those do translate to like an IIS instance. The difficulty just becomes how do they get updates? So right now we're doing pipeline development. We're doing framework updates to this, maybe a couple a week. So how do you get those updates? And when we add a new feature, how do you get those? And do we want to manage like sending updates to customers and having them apply them? If you do want to put it internally, I would say the best option would probably be like a private public cloud. So if you did have Azure, kind of like a private instance of Azure, that would work better because everything is set up for Azure. So if you are like private public cloud consumer, that we could probably make work. I think we would make it work for a customer if they were serious and wanted to purchase this and really, really wanted it on-premise. We would talk to them about it. It's simple enough for us to do. I think long-term, how they get updates and how we support them it becomes an issue.
Okay, and we'll follow up with the person who asked that question individually as well.
Okay.
So expect to hear from us. So we've got some questions on the licensing model for both this and mobile. So I thought it'd be a good time for us to describe how both mobile and Kanban are licensed. And then for anyone who's interested in cost, we will follow up with you individually to have conversations and get an idea of your size and scale, and we can provide you with individual quotes one-on-one after.
Yeah, so generally the way that this is licensed is we do license for the full Cherwell user base. So if you've got 25 seats of Cherwell, we sell you 25 seats of this, and you do pay per month. It's kind of a hosted, and we do ask for like a 1-year contract. So we kind of go year by year, and then if you bundle the two together, and both mobile and Kanban are both priced like that. But if you do bundle them together, there's a substantial discount for the second product. So the second product becomes really inexpensive. And any pricing issues, and Steve Jones does all the working with customers on pricing and subscription and how much they're going to pay. So you work with Steve on that. But yeah, we do license it for everyone, and that's just what we decided to do. So we realize a lot of customers may have a small percentage of their user base that wants to use this, but that is why you go and talk to Steve and see what he can do.
And Steve Day or myself will follow up individually with everyone on this webinar. So we'll see if pricing is something you'd like to take a look at, and we'll continue those conversations offline one-on-one. So I have two related questions, Eric. The first one is, does red have to be applied, the red map? And the other is, I understand the director board is based on red. Are all the boards based on red? So if you want to address those together.
Yeah, so these boards can be built for any object in Cherwell. So you could build a board for users, any object that's exposed via the API. So which is most objects. That's going to be all of your objects. Anything you can go into the orange pill and look at from there, you can build a board against. And it's really simple. We have a board like admin tool to build a board, and you can build boards in just a couple minutes. So yeah, you don't need red at all. You can build it against, so this is built against tasks. These incident boards are built against incidents. These change boards are built against change. So any object that you have in Cherwell, you can build a board for. So, and anything that you see here is like, if you want to see different fields on the card, you can put whatever fields you want on the card. Anything you want to see on the screen, like if you want to see different fields on the screen, you do that. And it's similar to how our mobile admin studio works. Our mobile studio, you just check a box next to the field you want to see on the form. And this essentially works the same way for this form. And then for the fields on here, it's a drop down with a list of the fields, and you just pick the field in order, the order that you want to show them in. So it's really simple to add fields to this. So yeah, anything custom objects, doesn't matter if you've got something custom that in there. In fact, we're talking to Cherwell about custom marketing objects, so their marketing team can use our Kanban boards in Cherwell. So, and Cherwell doesn't really have anything to manage marketing campaigns. So they're going to have a custom object for marketing campaigns, and then use Kanban boards to manage their marketing campaigns.
Okay, I've got two related ones that I'm going to lump together.
Okay.
How difficult is this to maintain, and can you show us how to configure the boards?
Yeah, I can show that. So it's pretty simple to maintain. So I'm just going to duplicate this so I can kind of go back and forth. So we have an admin section, and in here we've got our Kanban boards section. And so these are the boards. So let's take a look at one of these boards. Let's look at an incident one. Let's look at one with Swimlanes maybe. Yeah, let's do that. Okay, so let's take a look at all open incidents for assignment. So the boards are here. So if I just click on this, my all open incidents for assignment, I can see I can change the name of this board if I want. And then this is the query that Cherwell our boards are running against. So you just pick the query that you want the board to run against. So you can actually change the query whenever you want. You can set up the board and then change the query against it and say, oh, I don't want these tickets in here. So you do have to write the query in Cherwell, and then it will show up in this drop down. So these are just all the queries that are in Cherwell for incident. And then we've got a keep clients in sync checkbox. It's kind of the next. So you check that if you want to keep this board in sync on the SignalR backplane. So if you don't want to do that for some reason, you would uncheck that. And then here we select what field in Cherwell is the top level column. So this column here, what field is that actually in Cherwell? So in this board, I actually have owned by team. If I want to change it to a different field, I can just pick the field out of the list of fields. And then I say, well, the column is defined by what list? And we do have this list picker functionality where these lists have to be built. And when we set up, and when you subscribe to Kanban boards, we'll do the initial setup. So we'll build all the lists and things, but essentially, like, we've got these list pickers that we can use, and you build a list picker kind of the same way you build a board. It's really simple. Now I forgot what one I was looking at for assignment. Okay. So then we say, all right, so what columns do I want? So I've got a list picker for teams, all the teams. You could have a list picker with just your teams, or you could put whatever you want in the list picker. So all of these values pop in, and then I say, yeah, I just want these teams. So if I don't want third level support, I just move it out of there. And then I click save. And then when I go into here and I refresh this, third level support's gone, right? So that's all it is there. So these are the column values basically. If I want to add one back in, if I want to add third level support, I add it back in, and then I can move it around. So what order is this in? So I can move that back in here, click save, go in here, and third level support's back, right? So maybe that was too fast. Third level support is back. All right, so let's look at the rest of this board. So I've got swim lanes. So here's where I can configure the swim lanes. So it's kind of the same thing. I pick what field in Cherwell the swim lane should be for. So in this case, it's status. And then what is the status defined by? So I've got an incident status picker I define, and then those columns are here. So what statuses do I want to show up in the swim lane? And then what columns do I want these to go for? So if I don't care about these guys, like I don't want to have the statuses in there, I just want to see them all, I can uncheck those. And then if I go in here, you can see now I only have swim lanes in first, second, and third level support. So you can, it's really flexible what swim lane fields you have these in. Say I don't want third level support, but want business development. I can do that and refresh. You notice these show up right away, right? So you'll get a test site and a production site if you subscribe to it. Actually, you can have as many sites as you want. But you can see these change right away. So if you're in production, people will see these board changes as soon as you change them. All right, so then we look at the card title field. So these fields right here, they show up kind of here, right? So we've got kind of title fields and tags are our two fields types that we have right now. And you just pick like, oh, okay, incident ID and description. I want to add another field to this category. Let's add category to it. We'll see if any of these have categories. Yeah, so this one does. So some of these have categories, some don't. So you can see they'll show up where like Office Suite, there's the category. So the category shows up on there. And then we've also got card owner field. So this is this drop down right here. So, and it's asking what field in Cherwell is that? So that could be a team, that could be owned by, so that could be whatever you want to have in there. So we kind of call this our quick assign. So if I want to assign this to somebody else, I could just quickly assign it to somebody else. I've got my other tab open, and it's distracting because the cards keep changing over on my left screen when I change them here. So we're saying what is that field? What is that field tied to? What do I want to tie that to? And the way that it works right now, basically, this list is just generated by all the values on this board. So we're gonna have some enhancements to that where you can define that a little more closely. But then we've got a few more things. So if I've got tags, and these tags are probably gonna change. We're probably gonna allow customers to add tags that don't exist in Cherwell very soon. We've already got column values that don't exist in Cherwell, so pretty soon we'll have tags that don't exist in Cherwell. We're also adding, hopefully this week, a checklist or a to-do list where you'll be able to put like a to-do checklist on your card. So you could have 10 or 15 or 20 things that you need to do and just check them off as they're done, and we'll have a little status. Like if you have 10 things, little status bar will show what the status of those, and that's not going to be stored in Cherwell. So we're kind of adding functionality that even Cherwell doesn't have to this. So we can add a tag field. So if you want to add another tag field, you can add it here. And then we do some coloring. This is still kind of rudimentary, but basically if like priority. Priority is 1. Let's do 3 because we can do that. And so we can kind of color these cards. And right now we just color. Well, hopefully we have some priority 3s in here so you can see. Of course not. But it colors this little line right here. So our standard color is blue. Kind of matches that here. But if we had some priority 1s, they'd show up as, or some priority 3s, they show up as red. Oh, I see what these are all text-based priorities. So let me change that to medium. Okay, so there you can see that anything that's tagged medium will show up red. So another thing that's not really in Cherwell is this card order. So we store card order on the board. So if you move things around, this generally implies, hey, work on this first, right? So if you're looking at something like if we go over to the board by user, and you're the owner of this group, you can say, hey, Emma, work on that first, Andrew, work on that first. And this card order is actually stored on Azure also. So there's no real card order, like nothing in Cherwell. We tried to store this in Cherwell. It just got too complicated because cards can be in different orders on different boards, and we just ended up storing in Azure. Just a lot more simple, but you can move things up like to the unassigned. Oh, hey, we're going to work on this one. As soon as somebody becomes available, I'm going to give them this ticket. So I can move that to the top of the list. So you can prioritize things with card order, irrelevant of anything else in the ticket. So it's just based on where you drag and drop the ticket to. So yeah, so that was my little demo of how that works. And adding a new one's essentially the same. If we add a new board, we can say, hey, what objects do you want? So here's our major objects. I can add in minor objects if I want to add a board to a minor object. I can add supporting objects, or if I want to take a look at a group object, I can add a board for any of these. I can add a group for like a work item of task. So it's really flexible as to what objects you can add boards for. And then once you add the board, then you generally get this interface, which allows you to specify the name, the query, the sync, the column field, what the definition of the column, all those things. So you can see you can add a board in just a few minutes. Oh, and I forgot to show in the columns, this one doesn't have any, in the columns, we've got drop actions. So this allows you to assign an action to a column. So here we've got a drop action called assign to user. And that basically you just click here. Here's where you can change the field value and the title. And then our drop actions for this object are here. And these actions do have to be defined in our object, but these are generally one steps or maybe rest actions. So we'll help you define those when you set it up, but you'll see that they're super easy to define these actions by object, and then you can just use them here. So here we've got assign to a user when I drop it on assigned, and I've got resolve incident when I drop it on resolve. So you can have drop actions. And one of the enhancements we're working on is kind of I don't know if Kuna's on here, but they've asked for it for a while. Sorry, Kuna, it's coming soon, I promise. The ability right now, we kind of have a deficiency where if the card doesn't know where it's coming from. So like Kuna has a requirement to be able to, let's go look here. Let's look by status. So say, hey, if it gets dropped on a sign from new, I want to run one action, and if it gets dropped on a sign from in progress, I want to run a different action. So right now we don't have that capability, but that is coming very, very soon. It's kind of at the top of our next in line list. So so that's coming. So Cherwell doesn't really work like that. Usually you're just going through either left to right or right to left, but it doesn't kind of have this like ad hoc, hey, just drop from anywhere. So we're going to support that with a little bit more action builder enhancements. So okay, Laura, is there anything else?
All right. Yeah, we have a half dozen or so other questions. On a related note, someone wants to see a way to quickly reorganize the order of the lanes.
The order of what?
The order of the lanes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, if I want to change the order of the lanes here, this is open incident by statuses. Let's go open incident by statuses. Is that the one I'm on? Must be. Okay, so I've got new, assigned, in progress, resolved, and closed right here. So let's make sure those match up. New, assigned, in progress, resolved, and closed. So let's say if I want to put in progress before new, I just slide it up. You can use these little arrows to kind of navigate these around. So I slide that to new, in progress, assigned. I click save, and we've got new, assigned, in progress, and this should change to new, in progress, assigned. If I refresh this, there we go, new, in progress, and assigned. So that's how you change the order of those board headings. So same thing like in Swimlanes. I can change the order of the swim lane too. So if I wanted to put Emma first before Claire, I could do that. So yeah, pretty much anything you see on this board, you can change.
Okay. Next question, you can assign tasks to specific user and board items, right?
Can you read that question again?
Yep, you can assign tasks to specific user and board items.
I don't know if I completely understand that question. Maybe you probably you can assign tasks to specific board. I don't know. Maybe a little more clarification on that question. Probably yes, but
okay. Okay, if you want to restate the question, feel free to submit it. Otherwise, we can follow up with you after and dive into it a bit further as well. Okay, the next one, is there a view that allows for multiple objects to be viewed in one board?
No, I know what you're talking about there. So you want to be able to view all your tasks and all your incidents and all your approvals on one board. So no, but that is coming. So we've had on our board for quite a while for mobile to have like a My Work button that you go in, and it'll show you, and it'll be configurable. So you can say, hey, I want my work to have these queries in it. My open incidents, my open tasks, my open change requests, my open approvals, and all those will show up in one spot. So we are going to do that, and that will give us the ability on our, so we're going to do that for mobile, because that's kind of a big mobile request we've had. I've had a couple of customers requesting a Kanban. So when we throw that in for mobile, it will be available for Kanban. It's going to give us that functionality. So then you can have a board that has all my tasks, all my incidents, all my change records, and then you'll have, and it'll work a little different on Kanban, but essentially you'll be able to configure what quote unquote my work looks like what queries do you want to pull into there, and then you'll be able to define columns. And then you'll in Kanban you'll have to map what that column is in that object. Like if I had this for incident tasks and changes, acknowledged might mean something totally different that might mean in progress an incident, and in a change that might mean something else. So you'll have to map what those values are by object to what shows here. But it'll all be part of the admin tool, and you'll be able to do it, and you'll be able to create like multitudes of my work iterations. So you could have lots of different boards with my work that'll show all the things in one spot, everything that you're working on, and that's coming pretty soon. I would look for that in a month or so, that functionality.
Okay, we can definitely make a note to follow up with you once that's available as well. Okay, the next question I have, is there a way to see how long a card existed in a given state?
Well, so Cherwell's going to know that. Cherwell will know that information, how long it exists in here, either via auditing. So you'd have to do it in Cherwell. Now, the trouble comes in is when we have these virtual columns, because virtual columns don't exist in Cherwell. And we are not tracking that on our board. So if that's important to you, that information, you would not want to use a virtual column for that. You would want to use a Cherwell value in there. So if I look at one of my, what is it, all open incidents? Yeah, so in progress hold is just in progress in Cherwell. So if I did want to track in progress hold, I would either have to create a status for that or update another field, like maybe have a hold Boolean that's true or false, that would get set when you drop it in progress hold, and then track when that was set and when it was unset. So any reporting that you want to do on what these board activities, it has to be out of Cherwell. So Cherwell's got the reporting engine, it holds all the data. So as you're building these boards, if that's important to you, like, hey, how long was this in progress hold, you have to figure out a way to store that in Cherwell. So, and I would say just either add that status to Cherwell, or we can add a field to Cherwell that would have that in hold. It's a checkbox or a text box or something, and then you could track via that. So just because it says in progress hold here doesn't mean you have to have a status like that. That can be a combination of a status of in progress and a checkbox or a Boolean that says hold.
I have a clarification on the previous question that we had.
Okay.
What the person meant was, you have a board set up for tickets. How do you see associated tasks to each ticket? And would I be able to assign or reassign users to those tasks?
Oh, sure. Let's see if I don't know if we have any tasks on any of these instances, but I'll show you how it would potentially work. So you can actually see the tasks, and keep in mind we are going to have an update soon where you'll be able to drill down from an incident into a task board. So right now, here, let me just add a task for this so we can show you what it looks like. Okay, so if I go into 10354, if I'm looking for tasks, shoot, which one was that? 10354? I didn't even see it on this board. Maybe that was the task. All right, that was the task ID. Okay, so yeah, so you can go into the card. So just tap here into the card, and you can look, and you can see where we've got all these specifics on this one that we're pulling into here. And it's got a little related items section. So we can set up like whatever related items to this object that you want to see. In this case, it's tasks. So I can see the tasks, and here's the task for this incident. It's a new task. If I have another one, and this, I can assign it to a team or assign it to a user here. I'm just going to leave these blank, but you can do whatever you want with these. You can have whatever fields you want on there. So now I can see these tasks, and I can see the parent public ID. I can see a bunch of information about these tasks. I can do things to these. I can assign it to a user. I can acknowledge assign to me. So a lot of the task activities. So yeah, you can see any related items from here. And we're going to enhance this board so that you'll actually be able to click this box or maybe another box and have a board come up with the tasks. So right now it's not ideal. You have to work with the tasks in more of a traditional manner. Non-board manner, unless you go to the task board. But soon we'll have drill downable boards so you can drill down into related items and manipulate those related items. And that'll come in really handy for like a change with a lot of tasks assigned to it, or like a PPM item with a lot of tasks assigned to it. So you'll be able to look at the PPM and then drill down into it and manipulate the tasks within that. We've got a lot of cool stuff planned for that.
Okay, great, thanks. Next question. Do mobile and Kanban share the same admin console?
Mobile and Kanban do share the same admin console. So if you're a mobile user and a Kanban user, you'll go to the same admin console. I will tell you that in test right now, this looks a little different. We're kind of separating out even a little bit more how the admin console works for mobile and Kanban. And then keep in mind, we're also going to have lower environment sync, which is going to share the same tool. And we also, so for mobile, the big thing that we did was we're releasing portal functionality. So we need a different design for that. So we've got that broken out. So we've got portal admin, mobile admin, and Kanban admin kind of all in the same place. So they all share the same admin tool and they share the same objects. So these objects, we're kind of moving this out of the mobile purview into more of an object purview, and then like the actions that are defined, we'll be able to define these actions when they're defined. We have this in test now, but not in production. But these actions are available for mobile, for portal, for Kanban. So you define the action and then you can use it in multiple places, or you can just define an action just for Kanban. So we're kind of changing a little bit how this works, kind of breaking it out a little bit more, but it's still important to be able to reuse these definitions for these applications so that if you are a mobile and Kanban user, you can kind of do it from one spot and reuse those items.
Great, thanks. So we have two. So at this point, if anyone else has questions, please enter them now. If we don't see any other questions pop up, we'll end the webinar after the two questions. So this will be your few-minute warning. All right, Eric, can you add cards for activities that are not part of a Cherwell object?
I'm a little confused by that question. I don't know if they're saying they want to add activities like to a Cherwell object, like an incident, or if you just want to add like, hey, this is my to-do list. I just want to create a board for just stuff I want to work on. I don't care if it's in Cherwell. So I guess I'll answer both of those. So we are adding more and more things that we can add to cards that don't exist in Cherwell. We're going to add tags pretty soon. We're going to add the to-do list or the checklist, and we're actually going to add. Well, adding tags is essentially adding fields that, because you'll be able to tag cards and then do search by those tags, and those tags won't exist in Cherwell. Can we create cards not against Cherwell objects? I'm going to say not right now. We have had mild interest in that, just being able to create cards that don't exist in Cherwell. So you can just create boards without having to define the Cherwell object and worrying about that stuff showing up in Cherwell, so like a personal to-do list. So I will say we've had mild interest in that. So we may go down that route. The reality is there's lots of products out there that you can do that with right now for free. So the only benefit would be if a Cherwell customer had wanted to, use Cherwell boards and kind of have their own like boards not based on Cherwell objects. So, so I hope that answers your question. If it doesn't, just reping us, or we can have a call about it.
Okay, very good, thank you. The last question I have, well, a quick one. Will you send a link to the recording? Yes, links will be sent out. Those will be coming. So the last question for Eric, how much of our data is stored on the Azure server to run the Kanban board?
None of it. So information that we store in Azure is kind of this stuff, right? So it says, what is the object? So we store the GUID of your incident object, which is the same for everybody that has Cherwell. We store what searches are available. So like these searches are available for, this is mobile, but these searches are available in mobile. So if I'm looking at a Kanban board, I'm saying this is what's stored on Azure, like the framework of this board. So, but all of the data, all the little fields on here, the information here in the dropdown, none of this is on Azure. So in fact, we can't even tell you what the data is. Like if we look on Azure and we track everything that's done, basically we use Azure to track it, but we can't see any of the data that's passed back and forth. So not only is it not stored on Azure, we can't even see it as it's like moving through Azure because it's all encrypted. Because it's encrypted from your browser to Azure and then Azure to Cherwell. So the only thing we can see, and it's not stored on Azure, but the only thing we can even see is that, hey, the user ran this query and it got a GUID. So I can see, hey, the user ran a query with this GUID, but it's not useful information for anybody. But yeah, and so none of this data is stored on Azure. It just kind of passes through Azure. Azure stores the framework of the cards, and in mobile's case, the framework of what does the form look like? What do the actions do? That information is stored on Azure, but none of this data is stored on Azure.
Okay, so at this point, I don't see any other questions that have come in, so I'd like to thank everyone for attending today. As I mentioned, we will follow up with you in the next day or two. It takes us a day or so to get the links live on our website, but you will get a link to the recording. If you want the slide deck, you can let us know. I'll reply back by email. We can send you the deck as well. I did have a request from someone to add some of the screenshots into the slide deck, so I think that's a great idea. We'll do that. And just expect to hear from either myself or Steve Day with the links. And if you'd like to get pricing, we'll follow up with you on that, and we can continue conversations one-on-one if there's further interest. So thanks for your time today, Eric, and thanks for everyone for attending. I hope it was helpful, and hope to see you on future advanced practitioner webinars. Have a great day, everyone.